Today is day 352 of the podcast, and just like yesterday, what we saw in Ephesians chapter 4, we're continuing to look at today with the idea of us functioning and experiencing the fullness of God. Experiencing His fullness is dependent upon the body's ability to cooperate with Him. The members, each one of us cooperating underneath the Lord Jesus and in submission to Him as the head of the church. I want to read from John chapter 1 verse 16 where it says, "For of His fullness we have all received, and grace upon grace." It's a corporate verse. This fullness of Christ, this mature expression of the body, comes to us as a people and not just as a person. It also shows up in Ephesians 1, verses 22 and 23, where it says, "He put all things in subjection under His feet and gave Him as head over all things to the church, which is His body, the fullness of Him who fills all in all." It requires the corporate we to receive the fullness of the Spirit of God and how Christ can be displayed in our midst. It also shows up one more time in Ephesians 3, and I'm going to start reading in the middle of one of Paul's big sentences, but I'm going to start reading at Ephesians 3:17. "So that Christ may dwell in your hearts," that's plural, "through faith, and that you," that's plural, "being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints." That's how the comprehension is going to come. "That you may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ, which surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled up to all the fullness of God." Do you know people that struggle with believing that they are loved? God's design is that we learn to understand the greatness of His love in the context of community. Now, most people have been wounded in that context, but that's the very place where God has prescribed that we would learn how great His love is for us. That's where we will experience His love in its fullness. Now, it's a challenging word for us to believe and to begin to live into. Today's question for you: what circumstances cause you to be dependent on someone else? Especially if you're independent, when do you learn to be dependent on somebody else?